I hope you found that as moving as I did. I found it moving when I wrote about the Golden Rule and the Silver Rule so extensively in Seeking the Sacred. In all the many, many times I thought of it long before I wrote Seeking the Sacred, when I was writing this liturgy and when I was hearing my sister ministers read it to you today. Those teachings are so powerful, so moving, so tender, and also so appreciative of what we are capable of being, but what we so often resist and resile from. I think it is not possible that those teachings would have come to us from every significant tradition if the teachers who taught them and exemplified them, particularly who exemplified them through the ways in which they lived, it's impossible to imagine that they would have dangled a carrot of behaviour in front of us if they thought it was too ridiculous that we could embody it. There must have been in each of those teachers a conviction that this is how we could live. And not only that this is how we could live, but that this way of living, this way of being, would be utterly transformative, not of our personal experience only, but of the experience that we gather together and call our world. Isn't it so simple that we would simply use our empathic imagination to guide our conduct, that we would behave towards other people in the ways that we want them to treat us? Could anything be simpler? If we just go back to that one of the teachings that Brooks read to you, this is my commandment, or maybe it could even have been said, this is my guidance. Because we are never going to change our conduct just because we have been commanded to. We might become obedient, but to live this, something has to shift in our hearts. So let's suppose it was not, this is my commandment. It was, this is my guidance. This is my inner knowing. This is the experience that I have that I want to share. That you should, and that you could love one another, even as I have loved you. So we learn love from one another. And it's a vital thing that we learn love from one another, because it is only when we love one another that we will keep one another safe. Through this, people will see that you are my followers. Now, when I read that first with a grown-up's mind, I think I wept. I wept because I was so aware that the entire course of our history would be different if we believed it possible to live in a way that exemplified love as a mark of our spiritual commitment. But the reality is that religion has often made all kinds of very elaborate and perhaps even convincing reasons, although we should not be convinced by them, as to why this is actually a conditional rule. Love your neighbours, but not all of them. Love your neighbours if you agree with them. If you disagree with them strongly enough, then condemn them or even slaughter them. This is one of the great heartbreaks of our human history. This may be the greatest heartbreak of our human history, inasmuch as many of those people were sincerely wishing to lead a spiritually driven life. And yet, on this most crucial aspect of it fell down and had no way to get up. But those people are not so different from us. We can also hear the call to the Golden Rule in so many ways. We can hear it as an encouragement. We can hear it as an affirmation of our power to love one another. We can hear it as an affirmation of our power to love ourselves. Or we can decide that it's actually for and about other people. That it's not really about our capacities. It's not really about the possibility that we might inconvenience ourselves in some way, or even set aside a beloved vision of ourselves that is small or mean-minded. To grow into the Golden Rule, and also the Silver Rule, which I'll speak about in just a moment. To grow into the Golden Rule, we have to do something that is very, very challenging for all of us, and that is to love ourselves. We hear it, don't we? Love one another as you love yourself. Do unto others as you would have them do to you. And this is the great sticking point. Because until we truly love this gift of life, we will not participate in life as lovers of life. So that the Golden Rule is simply self-evident. Which doesn't mean, of course, that we wouldn't sometimes forget it, that we wouldn't sometimes be petty, that we wouldn't sometimes be hurtful or harmful. We will. But what this calls us to is to get up and recover and forgive ourselves as well as other people, to learn from it, to grow in wisdom, to become holier and more whole, both through the shadow and through the light. In doing that, of course, we leave our isolation behind, because in doing that, we recognize our crucial interdependence. In this 21st century life, we've come to a state in terms of our evolution of consciousness in which we have never been more individualistic. And there's a light side to this, as well as the shadow. And the light side of it means that we know we can take personal responsibility for our conduct and grow through that awareness. At the same time, we can see through the experiences of our personal existence and of our global existence, which is brought to us at all times, that we are utterly interdependent. And when we don't understand this, we also see in our 21st century life that we suffer the agonies of isolation. The agonies of isolation. When we don't believe that our life matters to anyone or that other people's lives really matter to us, we are cast adrift from the family in which we intrinsically belong. So this call to the Golden Rule is a very, very crucial one. It's crucial for our personal and moral and spiritual development, but it's also crucial for this unique point in history in which we are called in a very profound and urgent way to keep one another safe. Knowing that it is difficult for many of us truly to encounter one another with love. I've also written a great deal about the Silver Rule, which is not second best. It's in a sense the yin and the yang. It's one leading to the other and the other leading to the other. And the Silver Rule is the determination, the affirmation, the clarity that at least harm will stop with me. And that when I do harm, I will allow myself to be aware of it. And rather than making excuses for it or falling into self-pity or finding 1,000 reasons, why you made me do this, I will say again, I am sorry. And I will embody my act of contrition or forgiveness by behaving a little bit differently as I go forward from this moment. And that becomes, again, not just easier, but far more self-evident when we make the decision that we are going to participate in life with all its complexity, with all its difficulties, with all its inevitable suffering, but also with its glorious possibilities for happiness from a place of love that must begin with love of one's own self, or at the very least, love that you have been given, this unique, precious gift of life. Some of you will know that Viktor Frankl is one of my heroes, and that he has written in a quite different kind of way about the possibilities that we have also to learn about participation in life, not through love only, but through the gaining of meaning. And I want to read you a tiny little passage from Frankl, whose major book, and a book that I hope you will all read a number of times through your life as your own maturity allows you to read it differently. Man's Search for Meaning, it's called. And here he writes, the way in which someone accepts his or her fate and all the suffering it entails. And Frankl wrote this, part of this book, as a consequence of his years in the concentration camps of the Second World War. So he knew a great deal about suffering, and he also knew a great deal about transcendence of suffering. So again, the way in which someone accepts his or her fate and all the suffering it entails gives them ample opportunity, even under the most difficult circumstances, to add a deeper meaning to life. Now, just to diverge a moment, it doesn't mean that we only learn through suffering. We can also learn through the most glorious and joyous of our encounters, and we can welcome them. But if we don't learn something from our suffering, then we have missed a possibility to bring ourselves further into the heart of the human family, where we all share so much that our differences become laughable. What you want most, I want most. What you want to avoid most, I want to avoid most. And what you yearn for, I yearn for also. So back to Frankl. This opportunity may remain or become for the first time brave, dignified, and unselfish. Or in the bitter fight for self-preservation, some may forget their human dignity and become no more than an animal. Here lies our chance to decide whether we are worthy of what life asks of us or not. And I found that quite wonderful. Are we worthy of what the Golden Rule is asking of us? That even when life is uncomfortable, even when life is painful or disappointing or stressful or tragic, are we worthy of love? Are we worthy of hope? Are we worthy of receiving the love that others may want to give us? And are we worthy of the love that could well up in our hearts to give to other people? Back to Iqbal, just to finish, the 20th century Sufi poet Iqbal. Who can tell what miracles love has in store for us, if only we have the courage to become one with it? Everything we think we know now is only a beginning of another knowing that itself has no end. And everything we can now accomplish will seem as nothing to us when the powers of our divine nature flower in glory are embodied by us, come to life through us, and act through us. Blessed be.